By now, we know where the candidates stand on illegal immigration, but what about the people covering them? For a look at the impact the mainstream media has had on framing the immigration issue, we turn to Howard Kurtz, the host of Media Buzz on Fox News. Howie, good to see you tonight.
Same here, Shannon.
All right, do you think that they're being fair and balanced? I mean, we know at least one news outlet is, but some other ones seem to be taking sides in this whole debate.
Generally speaking, the mainstream media are sympathetic to the plight of illegal immigrants to the point that it often colors the coverage. I mean, they quote critics on the other side, sure, absolutely. But the underlying tone is that President Obama is helping to deliver justice to these 11 million people who are here illegally. And the Republican Party is committing suicide among Hispanics. And here's Exhibit A. The pundits and the prognosticators and the journalists were absolutely unanimous, or virtually unanimous, I should say, that Donald Trump was crippling his campaign when he talked about Mexican immigrants and rapists. And in fact, his pushing of that issue and the wall has provided the fuel to bring him to the top of the Republican pack.
Well, listen, we know that there are these memos that have gone out publicly, not privately, from certain media organizations that you're not allowed to use certain words. I have a friend who works at a different media outlet who was chastised for using, I think, the word illegal immigrant. She felt like it was the accurate description of a suspect in a particular case, and she was chastised for that.
Well, I don't like the shorthand illegals because these are people and some of them are struggling to get by. But the idea of, undocumented workers, strikes me as a euphemism because the bottom line here is that the people who are here broke the law in order to be here illegally. And that's the center, of course, of the political debate. But you were talking earlier about the Kate Steinle murder in San Francisco by an illegal immigrant. And I did a little research going back. The Washington Post didn't even cover it in the newspaper that I could find. The New York Times had a story inside the paper, but framed it as problem of communication between federal and local authorities. So the tragedy wasn't examined, as it should have been, in my view, as part of the danger of allowing illegal immigrants with questionable records to stay in this country.
Well, and I know that when the president took so many actions with regard to, I don't want to say amnesty, although some people argue some of what he's done is amnesty for certain people who were brought here as young children and others, there seemed to be sort of a spirit of praise for him in some media outlets for doing that and not questioning him about the use of executive orders or about the fact that 20 sometimes prior to him doing it, he had said some version of saying he couldn't legally do it. I mean, it seemed like there was a lot of praise for him and that he sort of moved things forward because Congress wouldn't do it and he had to.
Right. It sort of reminds me of the gay marriage issue. So in looking at that coverage, it seemed to me that the focus was not on the president bypassing Congress and acting unilaterally, but it was on the boldness of the move. The Washington Post had front page pictures of celebrating immigrant families, and that's part of the story, and I don't think that that should be ignored. But the news story in the Post said President Obama is willing to forge ahead despite the headwinds. New York Times editorial page, that's opinion, called the plan wise. A very different approach than, for example, when George W. Bush would bypass Congress, and it would be that action itself or that assertion of executive authority that would become the focus of much of the coverage.
By headwinds, did they mean the U.S. Constitution?
Well, that's the debate that we should be having, and I want to paint with too broad a brush. I mean, some outlets, try to present both sides, but I do think you can tell a lot by the underlying tone of a story, the words that are used. And the bottom line here is that the coverage focused on, as when a gay marriage became the law of the land and there was all this focus on happy and celebrating couples, the focus was on, TV cameras, the natural instinct of broadcast is to go find families that are happy that they could come out of the shadows. And so that's where I think it's been less than fair and balanced.
We'll see you Sunday, and we'll be right back on the Kelly File. Thanks, Howard.
Great.